Ah, dragon types. They may have on average the highest base stats with a total of 553.78, but for those who think that this will be a walk in the park, they can think again. Okay, in Pokemon Ultra Sun and Moon we can use very strong Pokemon like Garchomp, Salamence or Como, but all the dragon types have one thing in common. They evolve very, but very late. Before we can use these strong Pokemon we have to deal with the weaker pre-evolved forms for a big portion of this game. Knowing how the Ultra games are, I think that we are in for a very hard challenge. So let's see together if I can become the very first Alola champion using only dragon types and using these rules. I can only catch the first dragon type Pokemon or Pokemon that evolves into a dragon type on a certain route. If a Pokemon faints, it is dead. I also cannot use items in battle, but held items are allowed. I can also not overlevel my Pokemon to a higher level than the next Kahuna's strongest Pokemon. I also try to stay beneath the next Totem's Pokemon level, but one time in this run it will not be possible to follow this rule, so when that happens I will tell you and I will try and stay as close as possible to its level cap. With all this said, it is time to go to Alola. For this challenge I will use as many possibilities that I can to win. I will also use the island scan that I have a bigger variety of Pokemon. One of the Pokemon that we can find using the island scan is Axew, and because it is the most starter-like of our options and because some early game battles are almost impossible with the only other dragon type, I chose to mod the game so that we can start with an Axew. I changed Rowlet to Axew so that he has in the future the fairy type Primarina. But for now the first battle is against Popplio. This one is very easy because we resist his water gun and defeat it after a few attacks. The next battle against Hau is a big spectacle because we have it on the big stage in the festival. Hau now has 2 Pokemon, but luckily Pichu only does Tail Whip and we don't get paralyzed. Popplio then starts with lowering our attack, so we decide to lower its defense to get our attack back to neutral. We then exchange Growl and Tail Whip until Popplio attacks us with Pound. After that Pound, we know that it's the moment to use Scratch again and win after some attacks. We then start our island challenge with a big battle against Lima and his normal type Pokemon. This early in the run, his Pokemon are very strong and this could have been nearly an impossible battle, but luckily we learned the powerful Dragon Rage, doing always 40 damage, what is massive this early in the game. But even Dragon Rage isn't strong enough to defeat Smeargle in one hit, but 2 assurances later are enough to defeat Smeargle and win against Lima. After our win against Lima, he grants us access to the Verdant Cave and its totem Pokemon. Gumshoos has boosted defense, but Dragon Rage neglects that and does 40 damage. He survives and calls his pre-evolves from Yungoos. Gumshoos is after a scary phase of him faster and hits us hard with a critical tackle. But after an assurance we defeat the Gumshoos and we level up learning Dual Chop, what is just enough to defeat the Yungoos and win our first trial and receive the normal Z Crystal. Even though we will receive a lot of Z crystals, we won't use a Z move in this challenge to make it even harder. When we leave the trial site, we find our second dragon type Pokemon Noibat. Because Noibat is so frail, we try immediately a Grey Ball and luckily can catch it in one ball. With 2 Pokemon in our team, we have a battle against Dulce and his Furfrou. I start with Axew but get our accuracy lowered, and because Dual Chop isn't a good accuracy move, we miss our first attack. I then get hit with a headbutt, doing just under half, but then we luckily hit a Dual Chop. My attack gets lowered with Baby Doll Eyes and we miss another Dual Chop. I then switch to get my attack and accuracy back, but when I switch back, Furfrou hits a critical hit and we lose our starter. Oblivion has Brick Break, but is too frail to survive one headbutt and we lose our very first run here. In my second run I try some things a little bit different. Before our battle against Dulce, I remember that I can have a third Pokemon for this battle. We can traverse through Route 3 to this patch of grass where we can find a Bagon. But the very annoying thing of this Bagon is that it has only a 1% spawn rate, so I tried to find it for over an hour. But luckily when I found it I could weaken it enough to catch it and have a third team member against Dulce. We immediately start with our newest team member Bagon, but get its attack lowered by Baby Doll Eyes, so its Big Break does just about a quarter. I then risk it to switch to Noibat, but luckily Furfrou only lowers her attack. We then stay in and survive a headbutt, and we can retaliate with Gusts. After this I switch back to Bagon, who gets hit with headbutt. Furfrou then gets our attack down, but we can still hit Brick Break to bring it into the red. Furfrou then tries to survive longer doing again a sand attack, but even with the accuracy drop we hit another Brick Break and this time we defeat Dulce deathless. As you can see, even a Furfrou is a very dangerous Pokemon in the beginning of this run and it won't be the last hard battle for us. But luckily the next Hau battle isn't one of those hard battles. He also has 3 Pokemon. He starts with Popplio and tries to lower our attack, but we use a special Dragon Breath hoping for the paralysis. Our second Dragon Breath brings him into the yellow and trigger his battery. Popplio then does a weak Water Gun, and after 2 Dragon Breaths and 1 Growl we defeat Popplio. We then see how frail a Noibat is in action because we can one-shot it with Dragon Breath, and Pikachu is just a Pikachu, so 2 other Dragon Breaths are enough to win this battle. We then go back to Iki Town for our first grand trial against Hala. Dual Chop does about 3 turns and matchup retaliates with a Revenge, but we survive it, and with the help of our Health Oran Berry we heal a little bit. Then I play it safe with Dragon Rage so that we don't miss our attack and defeat him with Chop. Knowing that Makuhito will go for a fake out, I stay in, and after that I switch to Bagon, who gets hit with a Sand attack. We hit through the Sand attack and hit another Dragon Breath and luckily paralyze the Makuhito. Makuhito has thick fat instead of guts, so the paralysis is only something positive for us. Even though it is paralyzed, it can hit another Sand attack. We then hit another Dragon Breath and survive 3 Arm Thrusts. To lose the accuracy drop, we switch to Noibat. When he comes in, Makuhito is paralyzed. One super effective wing attack later is enough to defeat it. His last Pokemon is Crabrawler, and I hit a wing attack doing just under half and get our defense lowered. The next wing attack still isn't enough, and we get ready for the first Z move of the game, all out pummeling. But even with the defense drop we survive it. Instead of attacking I accidentally go for Roost, and luckily we survive the next pursuit, so the next turn we go for Ring Attack and win our first grand trial. To get to the next island we hop on a Mantine and surf to Akala Island where we meet Dexio and battle him. We start with a bite against Mine Jr. and he gets a confusion, but a second bite is enough to defeat it. His second Pokemon is Espeon, and luckily we stocked up in between battles on some leftovers, because those 4 HP that we gained are enough to decipher Psybeam. Bite does over half and we switch to Tusk into a quick attack. Psybeam does again a lot of damage, but we survive it and hit an Assurance to defeat Dexio. In this How battle he evolved his starter and is a bigger threat. It luckily just starts with Pound, but our Dragon Breath doesn't do that much. His Disarming Voice does a lot of damage and is super effective against us. So we try a Protect to heal up a little bit, and we see that it isn't enough to switch to Axio. Instead of using Disarming Voice, it goes for Aqua Jab, something that we resist. I try a Dual Chop, but just do little damage. He then goes for the normal Z move, but his attack is so low that we can take it very easy and defeat Brionne with Assurance. His 3 other Pokemon go very easy down and will win against How. The big battles follow each other very fast, and next up is Gladion. He starts with what looks a Zubat, but we know that it's his Zorua, and we use Brick Break and one-hit KO it. Next up is the real Zubat, and we try with Protect to heal a little bit. The Dragon Breath and Bite are then enough to defeat it. His last Pokemon is his hardest, type Mel. We start with Brick Break and get hit with a hard tackle. Protect heals us up again a little bit and we switch to Axio, risking a pursuit, but then he goes for Tackle. But 2 Dual Chops are enough to defeat type No. Our second totem battle is one against an Araquanid with a high speed stat. It starts with the Aurora Beam and it does just under half. We hit our Dragon Breath and get the important paralysis. I also try to paralyze the Jupiter, but we only hit it with Dragon Breath and gets hit with a Sticky Web. When Araquanid gets paralyzed, we hit the Jupiter again and get a critical hit and defeat it. The Araquanid hits another Aurora Beam and get our Bagon down to the red. We then switch into Axio and fall for the Sticky Web, lowering our speed and getting hit with another Aurora. It luckily doesn't do that much damage, but for safety measures I go for the Protect healing strategy. I retaliate with Dragon Rage and get it into range to defeat it, but we get hit with another Aurora Beam. Araquanid then calls for Masquerain, but we have to stay in to defeat the Araquanid first. Masquerain goes for a Bug Bite, but luckily doesn't do that much damage, so we then hit the Araquanid off the field. I then switch to Oblivion and 2 wing attacks are enough to win this trial. Now that we can serve, we can go back to Melemele Island and catch a team member for the future. Thanks to the island scan we can find Horsey and catch it. For now it will go into the box because it is only a water type, but when we can evolve it into Kingdra we can use it. The next trial is maybe one of the hardest trials in the game, the Alolan Marowak. But it is also at this point that I couldn't say under the level cap because there were too many battles between the 2 trials. Against Marowak I start with using Rain Dance because he loves starting with Detect. The big difficulty for this trial are the 2 very strong Pokemon at this moment in the game. But luckily Marowak loves switching between attack and detect, so we go for protect on their attacks. When Marowak goes for detect, we can focus only on Salazzle, we get hit with Venoshock, but we can retaliate with a crunch. We then go again for the protect heal strategy and hope that Marowak goes for another detect the next run, what luckily happens. So Salazzle then goes for the torment, and one crunch later she is defeated. Now that it is one-on-one, I go again for a protect heal. Marowak then knows that it has to attack us, so instead of going for detect, it uses Brick Break, leaving us only with 5 HP left. These 5 HP are very important so that we can set up the rain and switch to Oblivion, who I gave Water Pulse. But when we want to use Water Pulse, it goes for detect and we lose a turn of the rain. But luckily our second try is a critical hit. I then need some HP back, so I use Roost to heal it up, and luckily Marowak went on this turn for a detect. The rain then goes away and we got hit with the flame wheel, but one Water Pulse is enough to end the Marowak and end this very difficult try, luckily deathless. The Lanturns try is more annoying than hard, but we first start with getting hit with an X-Scissor and fighting back with an Air Cutter. The first Pokemon that comes to help Lanturns is Comfey, and that's good for us because it really can't hurt us that much. The bad thing about the Comfey is that it can heal Lanturns up and boost its defense. So for a few turns we switch between Roost, keeping us healthy, and hurting both Pokemon with Air Cut, doing damage on the 2 Pokemon until the Comfey is defeated. The next ally of Lanturns is Kecleon, so we switch to Axew to deal with it. On the switch we get hit with a Dizzy Punch, but we don't get confused. After an X-Scissor we go down to about half and attack the Kecleon with Dual Chops, changing it into a Dragon type to cancel its tap moves. Kecleon knows that it will go down, so it sets up the Sun to help Lanturns, but we take another X-Scissor and defeat Kecleon with Dragon Rage. Now that it's only Lanturns, we can switch to Bagon. We'll first take 2 X-Scissors so that we can end the Sun with the Rain Dance. After healing up with the leftovers and protect, we try to paralyze it with Dragon Breath, but it doesn't work, and after getting into the red, we switch back to Oblivion. Because we got rid of the Sun and Lanturns has already used his Bright Herb, we can stop the Solar Blade with Protect and then switch again between Roost to heal, Air Cutter to do damage, and Protect to stop the attack of Solar Blade, until it is defeated and we defeat the last Totem Pokemon on this island. This win was also very monumental because from this point we can find a lot of new Pokemon very fast. We first wait until it starts raining in the jungle that we can find our 4th team member, Goomy. To find Goomy we first need to find a Metapod so that we have an easier time waiting for the Goomy to spawn as an ally Pokemon. We then defeat the Metapod and catch Goomy after chucking some Great Balls at it. In Konikoni City we buy a Jaw fossil and go to the Fossil Restoration Center and restore it into a Tyrant. Our grand trial against Olivia starts with Axew vs Anorith. It starts with a Bug Bite and our newly learned Rock Tomb is just not strong enough to defeat it. But thanks to the speed drops we are faster than it, and after some healing we can defeat it with Dragon Claw. Against Leap we start with the Dragon Claw, but it doesn't do that much damage because of its good defense. Seeing that Ancient Power does that much damage, I switch to Goomy. Its first Dragon Breath immediately paralyzes the Leap, and then we switch to Tyrant so that we can defeat the Leap with Brick Break. Her last Pokemon is Lycanroc and it starts with Bite and we lower its speed with Bulldoze. After 2 Bulldozes we are faster and can win this battle and the Grand Trial. With this win we can go to the 3rd island, and thanks to the level cap being 33, this means that we can get our very first evolution with Bagon into Shelgon. We then use our newly evolved Shelgon against who we start with a Crunch and get the defense drop. A Disarming Voice does little damage, and after a Dragon Claw we defeat Brionne. Raichu is next and has a powerful Psychic, but our defenses are so good that we can survive it and one-hit KO the Raichu with Crunch. His 3rd Pokemon is Tauros and we resist its Horn attack with Tyrant and fight back with Bulldoze to get its speed down. Seeing that it can't do so much damage against us, I start setting up some Stealth Rocks for some passive damage against other Pokemon. After another Bulldoze we are faster and use Bite to flinch the Tauros. The next Bite is enough to defeat it. Noibat then goes down to our Dragon Tail, and Flareon only needs 2 Bulldozes to get ourselves the win. Instead of going to the next trial, we first take a little detour to the Cantonian Gym where we can battle against another Dragon type user, Ryuki. But luckily Axew is the star of the show because this only needs 2 Dragon Claws to defeat its first Pokemon Turtonator. Drampa only needs 1 Dragon Claw, Even though Gabite is faster and does some damage against us with Dual Chop, it isn't enough to defeat it, but our Dragon Claw is strong enough to defeat Gabite. The reason that we have fought him is that we received the Dragon Skill, and with that we first evolved Horsey into Seadra and then used the Dragon Skill to get our very first fully evolved Pokemon, Kingdra, and for the first time get a full team of 6 Pokemon. For Sophocles' trial we have to fight against Togedemaru, who starts with Zing Zap, and we use Water Pulse getting the confusion. Skarmory comes to help it, but we keep attacking Togedemaru, who first gets hit in confusion and then receives another Water Pulse. We then get flinched because of Zing Zap, and Skarmory boosts their speed with Tailwind. Another Zing Zap luckily doesn't flinches us, and we get tormented by Skarmory and attack the Togedemaru with Water Pulse into the yellow. To stall the Tailwind and heal a little bit, I use Protect. Thinking that Togedemaru will go for Spiky Shield, I change my attacks to Skarmory with Water Pulse and we get confusion. Togedemaru tries to flinch us with Zing Zap, but we survive it and finish the Togedemaru off with a Brine. With another Tailwind set up by the Skarmory, we stall a little bit with Protect and then get lucky with the confusion and hit another Water Pulse. Skarmory then hits itself again in confusion and we defeat another Pokemon with Brine, winning this trial. Our next battle is one against Guzma. He starts with Golisopod and will always goes with first impression, so we protect to stop it. It then tries to Sucker Punch us, but we start setting up with Dragon Dance. I hope that it would work a second time, but it goes for Razor Claw and we lose some defense. We then play it safe with Protect and heal a little bit. We then do a little bit more of setting up, and luckily Guzma goes for Sucker Punch doing no damage. Then we went to scout Guzma out using Protect and healing a little bit up, and we see that it goes for Razor Claw. Seeing that it wants to attack us, we go with Dragon Claw and get it into emergency exit. With our boosted attack and speed, we can OHKO the Masquerain with Roxune, leaving only Golisopod left. We start again with protecting the first impression and end the battle with the Dragon Claw taking a Sucker Punch first. Even though we have a lot of firepower in our team, our next team member is a real fire type and can also take a lot of punches. On Blush Mountain we can find Turtonator and catch it. The Marowak trial was very hard, but this one is maybe even harder. Mimikyu can almost survive all our attacks and it can retaliate very hard back. So we need to get its attack down first. We start with Tyrants and we can take a player off and use Charm. Because -2 attack isn't enough, we have to stay in and hope for the best and survive. Luckily another player off and only get burned by Bennett. Then we do another Charm, nearly making Mimikyu useless. I then go to Axew and take some attacks. The next thing that I want to do is stalling the battle out and getting Mimikyu out of play roughs. After that we switch to Shell Gun and get burned by the Bayonet. Because we are burned, our attack is lowered, we go for a Crunch on the Mimikyu, get its decoy off and also get a defense drop on the Mimikyu. Then we stall again with the Protect, but even with Protect we get cursed by Bayonet. We then switch to Turtonator, who is a defensive volt, but make him even bulkier by using Iron Defense. Thanks to that we almost take no damage for the attacks and start our own attacks with Flamethrower. A few are enough to defeat Bayonet and Mimikyu, winning this very hard trail, luckily deathless. Our next Pokemon is again one that's an ally Pokemon. Thanks to Krokorok we can find Gabite, and after switching a lot we can defeat the Krokorok and can catch Gabite. Not only have we caught a new Pokemon, we get another power injection with a double evolution of Axew into Fracture and Tyrant into Tyrantrum. In Potom we have another Guzma battle, and again we do the same strategy as before. Protecting on the first impression, stalling some Sucker Punches with Dragon Dance and then start attacking Golisopod and Masquerain. For Pinsir we switch to Turtonator and the Flamethrower and Dragon Pulse are enough to defeat it. Thanks to our victory in Potom we can finally fight our grand trial against Nanu. Sableye starts with Fake Out, but because of our leftovers we almost gain every HP back. We then set the rain up and take a Shadow Ball. Our Water Pulse is not enough to get it under health, so we use Twisters hoping for a flinch, but it can attack us. We then go for Brine, and thanks to the rain boost we defeat Sableye. Krokorok uses Swagger to confuse us, but we break through it and OHKO the Croc. Persian is his last Pokemon, and because the rain has stopped and we are confused we switch to Turtonator. Persian uses Power Gem, but we can take 2 of them, but he can't survive 2 of our Flamethrowers and we win the 3rd Grand Trial. After our victory against Nanu we can go to the Aether Paradise, where our starter evolves into its fully evolved form Haxorus and Gabite evolves into Garchomp. Our 3rd and final battle against Guzma goes even faster than the 2nd one. We start with using Protect, and 4 Dragon Dances and Dragon Claws later, we have smashed Guzma. Lucamine has some dangerous Pokemon against us, but she starts with Clefable who does Charm. We are a special attacker, so our Flamethrower isn't affected. She then does Moonblast and deals some massive damage and lowering our special attack, something that does affect our Flamethrower. For some reason she then switches into Milotic and we hit it for some little damage. Kingdra can take Milotic's Hydro Pumps and we can fight back with Dragon Pulse. When Milotic is in the red, I set the rain up, and when I want to finish it, Milotic starts using Dragon Pulse for the first time, but it is too late because she is defeated after our attack. Thanks to the rain and being under half, Brian defeats Clefable in one hit. Lilligant then comes out and we switch to Haxorus and get paralyzed. She then is faster and confuses us, but even with being confused and paralyzed, we can hit an attack and defeat Lilligant with an X-Scissor. Haxorus is our best option against Lopunny, so I first try to protect and it works, but when I went to attack it, we get hurt by Ice Punch and the confusion. Being this low, I switch to a Tyrantrum and take a resisted Thunder Punch. 2 crunches are then enough to take Lopunny down. Beware is last, so I bring our Shelgon out, who first avoids a takedown, then takes a Zen Headbutt and we can land a Toxic, putting a timer on the Beware. We start our first Toxic stall of the run, and after 2 turns of Toxic we go to Garchomp who takes a Drain Punch. While the Toxis is stacking up, we use Dig to get one more turn of Toxis and do some damage. We survive another Drain Punch and do Dig again and win against Lucamine underground. Before the next trial against Como, we do some team building. First our Noibrat evolves into Noivern, then we take the boat to Executor Island to catch, believe it or not, an Executor, and after that we run through Pony Canyon and find a Jangmo-o, who we first evolve into Hakumo and then in Camo-o, and last our Shelgon evolves into Salamence. With all that team building out of the way, it is time for the Dragon Totem Pokemon, and we have a big strategy plan to defeat the Camo-o. But our strategy isn't needed because we crit the Camo-o on our first turn and defeat it in one attack. The biggest boss of the Ultra Games is Necrozma. To defeat it, there are just so few options. Or you fight with your entire team and lose a lot of Pokemon, but that's not so handy in Nuzlocke. Or you use the Focus Chess Endeavor quick attack strategy, what is not an option for my team. Or you go for a Toxic stall. Even though we don't have Endeavor, we use the Focus Sash to survive a hit of it and poison the Necrozma. Then I do Protect and make the hard decision to sacrifice a Pokemon. I chose for Executor because it has the fewest things that it can do in the upcoming battles. Evades an attack, Crozma's Dragon Pulse hits and defeats Executor, getting our first death of the second run. Thanks to the sacrifice we need to survive 3 more turns, so I bring out Garchomp and start with Protect. I gave it the Quick Claw because you never know that it would activate, but sadly it activates on the Protect. I know that Necrozma will outspeed me and that Garchomp will faint, so I just click Dig to see what will happen, and Quick Claw activates for a second time in a row. The poison then needs only 1 more turn, but sadly the Quick Claw activates again, but luckily we defeat the Necrozma with Dig and win this battle with only 1 loss. The Ultraman pay tribute to our fallen hero and try to give us a Poipole to fill in the empty spots in our party and heart, but Executor can't be replaced so easy, so we decide to not use Poipole. We can maybe not fully replace Executor, but to have against 6 Pokemon we first evolve our Goomy into Sliggoo, and then with the Tears from Heaven, Sliggoo absorbs all of them, evolving into Goodra. We start the last trial with a battle against the Fairy Captain Mina. We first take a Play Rough with Turtonator and then blast back with a Flamethrower to defeat Mora. Gramble has very high attacks and can hurt Turtonripper with Earthquake, so we lower his attack with Intimidate from Salamence, and Earthquake has no effect on the flying Pokemon. Our Steel Wing does about half, and thanks to a Charty Berry we take a super effective Stone Edge, and then we switch to Goodra, who has good defense and avoids a Play Rough. Sublime is faster and her Sludge Wave is enough to defeat Gramble. Ribombee is her last Pokemon and uses Pollen Puff against our Goodra. We fight back with another Sludge Wave but can't kill the Ribombee. It then starts powering up his Z move, but thanks to the Roselli Berry, the Fairy type move doesn't kill and we end the battle with last Sludge Wave. We then traveled again through all of Alola to battle a lot of captains, so that we receive some petals that we can defeat the last totem Pokemon. Ribombee has boosted stats and is another big threat that we again have to Toxic Stall to defeat it. We tank some of its moves thanks to our Roselli berries to reduce the fairy moves, and after some switches and protects we end up with Goodra, who tanks a last Dazzling Gleam and a spit up from Pelipper, who then sees Ribombee Feint to the Toxic. Knowing that Pelipper can't hurt us that bad, we use 2 Dragon Pulse and win the last trial of the game. But before we can end our island challenge, there is one last grand trial that we have to face. Kingdra starts against Hop with a massive Scald, but it isn't enough to Oko Golurk, who sets up Stealth Rocks. We're then again faster and finish him off with Brine. Flygon is fast and strong, so we switch to Goodra, who can take a Dragon Pulse but sadly get paralyzed. We then take another one and fight back with a Dragon Pulse, but just not defeat the Flygon. Hoppo uses a Hyper Potion, but it doesn't heal the Flygon to full HP, and another Dragon Pulse is enough to defeat it. When Mudsdale comes out, I switch to Salamence, who lowers its attack and isn't affected by the Ground Sea move. Salamence isn't the best opponent for Mudsdale because we only have physical attacks. Mudsdale has stamina, so every turn we do a little bit less damage because her defense grows by every attack. After getting Salamence very low on HP, we bring Scales back out and take some damage, but can defeat the Mudsdale with a special Brine. After 2 Dragon Pulses and a Mud Bomb, we are low on accuracy and HP, and Gastrodon has about half left, so we switch one last time to Oblivion, who uses a first Air Slash to flinch the Gastrodon and a second one to win our last grand trial. Before the Pokémon League, we have one last battle against Gladion, and we start with Salamence to drop the attack of Crobat and immediately switch to Tyrantrum, who takes all Crobat's attacks. We then set our Stealth Rocks up and defeat Crobat with Rock Slide and Crunch. Fear Lucario's moves, I go to Turtonator and take an Aura Sphere. A second one doesn't defeat it, but our Flamethrower does its thing on its Lucario. His Silvalo is a fire type, so we switch to Kingdra, but I misread the damage and switched Kingdra into the Dark Sea move from Zoroark, nearly defeating Kingdra. We then have to switch to Kamao, who first takes a Night Daze and then, thanks to Sandproof, isn't affected by Hyper Voice, but one Sky Uppercut is effective and is enough to knock down Zoroark. The real Silvalo comes out and we only need 2 Dragon Claws to win against Gladion. The very last thing that we have to do before going to the Pokémon League is decide which 6 team members we will use in the league, and it was a very difficult decision. But seeing all the mons to our disposal, we didn't take our starter Haxorus, the Speed Demon Noivern or the bulky Goodra. They were very strong team members, but Haxorus and Goodra are only Dragon type and the rest of our team is Dual types. And Flying types aren't that helpful in the league, so sadly Noivern also has to be benched. But the 6 Pokemon that we will use are Fang the Garchomp holding a Muscle Band having Dig, Firefang, Crunch and Dragonclaw, Fury the Salamence, Fly, Thunderfang, Dragonclaw and Steel Wing with the leftovers. Kommo is set to be the sweeper with Dragon Dance, Close Combat, Clanging Scales and Outrace, Dragonfang. Our 4th team member is Shell the Turtonate with a Charcoal and Shell Smash, Dragon Pulse, Shell Trap and Flamethrower. Scales has Scald, Dragon Pulse, Brine and Flash Cannon with the Expert Belt, and our last Pokemon is Jaw, who will play a big role in the league with Crunch, Earthquake, Rock Slide and Stealth Rocks. These 6 Pokemon will have to make us proud starting against Molayne, the Steel user. We begin with being paralyzed by Klefki, but we can set up some Stealth Rocks. Klefki is the ultimate setup Pokemon and it uses Reflect, lowering our physical damage so Earthquake doesn't do even half. It then uses its own hazards with spikes and we are paralyzed during the turn. A second layer of spikes are being put down, but this time we hit our Earthquake. Knowing that Reflect is nearly over, I switch to Garchomp, who can take the spikes damage and Flash Canning. Then I go for Dig to avoid the second one and get lucky that Klefki doesn't go for another Reflect before we defeat it. With Klefki down, its most annoying Pokemon is then defeated and then Metagross goes down with 2 Digs. We then switch to Salamence because Earthquake is a big possibility and we guess right. Knowing that we can't be defeated with whatever move that comes out, we stay into a Steel Z move and do some big damage with the critical Dragon Claw but get our speed lowered. We switch to Kamao, who can take an Iron Head, and after Dugtrio heals itself, one close combat is enough to defeat it. Bisharp is quite weak to the close combat but tries to hit us first with a Metal Sound, but Soundproof blocks that and the close combat does the trick. His last Pokemon is Magnezone, and you switch to Kingdra, who can take a Flash Cannon and strikes back with the Scald, burning the Magnezone. It then goes for Thunderbolt, bringing us down to the red, but thanks to the burn damage, Magnezone is under half and Brine defeats the Meta. The second Elite Four member that we face is Acerola. Bayonet starts with the Shadow Claw, but we defeat it with 1 Crunch. Frostlass has Blizzard, so we switch to Turtonator, but she goes for Confusory. Frostrat then tries to hit a Blizzard on us, but it fails and we try using Flamethrower and succeeds defeating it. Then comes a pile of sand, so we go to Salamence, who isn't affected by ground moves. We then do Dragonclaw for some damage and face the Ghost Sea move, just barely surviving it. Thanks to the damage of Dragonclaw, we can switch into Kingdra and take a Shadow Claw and defeating the pile of sand with Scald. Against Dhelmise I go back to Turtonator, who is almost unaffected by Energy Ball, only getting its special defense dropped. The same thing happens after a Shadow Ball and our Flamethrower just isn't strong enough to defeat it. Dhelmise then heals up and our second Flamethrower is again just not enough to defeat it. So seeing that, we switch to Kamau while she heals the second time. We then need only 3 clanging skills to defeat Dhelmise. Drifblim is lost and I check how much damage we will do with clanging skill, but it is so little after Amnesia that we switch to Tyrantrum to end Drifblim with a Rock Slide and a Crunch, winning against the second Elite Four member. Third is our rematch against Olivia, but it isn't really a battle. We start with setting up some stealth ruts and take an X-Scissor. Then we go to Kamau, who gets caught in another X-Scissors, but we then start setting up with Dragon Dance while getting hit by Crush Claws. After 3 dance parties and 2 defense drops, we start the fun with close combat and defeat all her Pokémon. We need to fly to our highest level against Kahili, but we begin again with the defensive wall Tyrantrum, who takes a Brave Bird and sets up Stealth Rocks. Another one comes out and we miss our Rock Slide, so we try it again, and this time we defeat Braviary. With Holucha we go to Salamence to drop its attack and survive the Flying Press. We go to Fly so that we heal being in the air, and when we go down we defeat Holucha. We gave Thunderfang just for this battle, but miss our first one and get hit with Flatter. Our attack is too high to gamble with the confusion, so we go to Turtonator against the Brave Bird. We try again with Salamence, but again are getting confused, so we do the same 2 turns over and over and decide to go to Tyrantrum after it instead. We switch again to Salamence but get confused again. So we go back to Tyrantrum and I decide to try to hit a Rock Slide, being actually faster than Mandibuzz and defeating it. Having this confidence, we stay in against Toucanon, who tries the Flying Z move doing some damage, but our Rock Slides defeats Toucanon. Her last Pokemon is the Fire Oricorio, and while it's getting switched in, it is losing half of its HP. But for safety reasons I switch to Garchomp to end it with Dragonclaw, but we get confused and hurt ourselves. So we go to Salamence, who takes an Air Slash, and we then get hit with Feather Dance, lowering our attack harshly, what means that we just miss the kill with Thunderfang. While our Oricorio heals, we switch to Kingdra and Oricorio tries to lower our attack again, but we use the special attack Scald and we defeat the last of the Elite Four. To become the first champion in Alola, we have one last challenge. Our rival and us will battle for the title. He starts with a Psychic with Raichu and it does 2/3 of our health, but our Dig is strong enough to defeat Raichu. Crabominable tries an Ice Hammer on the switch, but it misses its attack, so then it tries to do Power Punch to boost its attack, but our Flamethrower just misses the OHKO, but we luckily get another burn and defeat it like that. Seeing Tauros' moves, I get an idea mid-battle. I start to pivot between Salamence, who isn't hurt by Earthquake and it will lower its attack thanks to Intimidate, and Tyrantrum, who can take some double edges. I get him down to -6 attack stages and put some Stealth Rocks in for one last time. Then I go to Kamau and start setting up, hoping for no critical hits. After 4 Dragon Dances, Tauros finally gets a critical hit and just misses out on the kill. This is for me the moment to start our close combat. Tauros goes down very easy, but then comes his most dangerous one, Primarine. I try another close combat and hope that it's enough. And it is. So after Primarina, Noivern comes out, but 1 clanging skills is enough, and Flareon can't take an outrage, meaning that we win the battle and that we are the champion and win this run. Whew! What a run was that! The moment that we lost the very first time, I thought, oh no, this will be a very challenging and long video to make. And it was. Having no evolutions until the 3rd island was very hard because our Pokemon weren't that strong and we only had 3 of them. But when we were past that point, it was a little bit easier. We then had some luck on the right moments with a quick claw against Necrozma. But this was an amazing run with a lot of Pokemon and even getting more of them thanks to the island scan. Surely let me know in the comments if you guys liked the small changes that I made to the run, like starting with the next show, and if you would like seeing such things in the future. Let me also know what I should do for the fairy type run in 2 videos, because I'm not sure how I will do the fairy type run, if I would go back to Alola or Kalos, or if you would like to see me do some fan games, because for the moment I can only record games up to Ultra Sun and Moon. But before that video there will be an electric run in a totally new region on this channel. So I hope to see you there, and you know what to do. Catch you later!